40 days after leaving Oregon, the Portland Timbers will return as champions. With goals from unlikely sources, the center backs, the Timbers burst Orlando's bubble to become the first and quite possibly only MLS's back tournament champions. We're live from Providence Park to break it down on Timbers Postgame presented by Old Trapper, which starts now. It was quite literally a unique month in Orlando, Florida. A tournament that had never happened before, that may never happen again. Won by the Portland Timbers with a 2-1 win over kind of the hosts, the home side, Orlando City. And now the Timbers with their first final victory in the Giovanni Severese era, and they bring back another trophy here to Providence Park for the trophy case. Good evening and welcome live to Providence Park for Timbers Postgame presented by Old Trapper, Jake Zivin, Nat Borchers. It's been a wild month. It's been literally an unprecedented month, and Nat, the Timbers are champions of the MLS's back tournament.
They're champions, Jake, and we just thought this tournament was never even going to come to fruition with all the difficulties surrounding the pandemic, but the tournament, you know, it came off. It came off well. This is the end of it, but the beginning, there were two teams that left the bubble, FC Dallas, Nashville. We thought that it may never come about, the tournament, but here it is. And you had a bunch of games that came through, over 40, 50 games in just a period of 1 month. You know, credit to MLS for putting the tournament together, but credit due certainly to the Portland Timbers for what they accomplished tonight. What a night for the Timbers.
Yeah, the last game of this tournament won by the Timbers. They get goals from center backs. I know that made you happy. What's your overarching analysis of how the Timbers were able to get it done tonight?
Oh, well, I wouldn't say it was their best performance of the tournament. Certainly, I think they started off a little bit slow, grew into the game, but we've seen that in terms of, I talked about their bread and butter before the game being defending very well organized and then transitioning quickly into the attack. And in this game, they scored 2 goals off of set pieces, maybe against the run of play, you might say, but it's big-time players who are stepping up in the big-time moments, and it just so happened to be the 2 center backs that stepped up on those set-piece situations, and as a center back, I'm definitely happy to see that happen.
The Timbers have now scored their last 4 goals on set pieces. Let's look at the highlights from tonight's match. The MLS is back tournament final. It began in the favor, certainly, of Orlando. They were on the front foot to begin this match, but it changed in the 27th minute off a set piece. Luis Mabiala, service from Diego Valeri.
And what a ball from the maestro here. He just puts it on the platter there for Mabiala, who does everything right there. The diving header, he gets it down. Nothing that the goalkeeper Gillespie can do, opens up the scoring.
39th minute, Orlando levels things.
Yeah, and unfortunately just a missed opportunity in the box to clear, and the Timbers not able to get that one right, and 1-1.
Then the Timbers, like they were knocking on the door. This is a full sequence of events that led to the game winner. Marvin Loria drawing a free kick. Great save from Pedro Gillespie, who was really good tonight. On the ensuing corner kick, another great save from him off Jeremy Bobasi, but another corner, and this is where the Timbers get the goal.
Yeah, and certainly what a great player. It's awful defending from Orlando SC, leaving Eric Williamson at the back stick, who does such a nice job to take that first touch, and then the second touch here, cuts it onto his right foot and just bombs it towards the middle of the goal. And Bobasi with the touch to Zuparic, who 5-holes Nani.
This is the second time in the Timbers MLS era that 2 center backs have scored goals in a match. That courtesy of the stat man Mike Donovan. The other time was here, right behind us, also in a big match of the first leg of the Western Conference Finals in 2015. You remember that, Nat?
Of course.
Nat Borchers, Liam Ridgewell scoring those goals. And they get it done. You talk about big moments. I mean, this was a team full of veterans, right? Full of experience. Experience in finals together. I think that showed tonight.
Yeah, I think it did. And I think that when you look at comparing the 2 teams, Orlando City versus Portland at the outset, you would say the thing that sets them apart, a little bit of quality, but definitely a ton of experience. And you looked at the starting lineup, the first 11, 6 of those 11 players had played, I think 5 of those 11 had played together in an MLS Cup before. Then you had Valeri and Chara, who had played together in MLS Cup 2015 and with Villafaña as well. And that makes a big difference when it comes to those big-time moments. Even if you're not playing well, you're certainly able to just kind of ride those waves and kind of ride that roller coaster to find those moments to get at teams when you're not playing well.
Man, this game tonight, it culminated a wild month. It'll be 41 days for the Portland Timbers in total that they were in Orlando. They'll come back to Portland tomorrow, and they'll come back with a trophy. And let's go back to July 13th, when this all started. It feels so long ago. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what this tournament would bring. We didn't know if it would finish. As you mentioned, Nat, they started by beating the LA Galaxy on July 13th, and they were so good throughout this tournament. 5 wins and 2 draws. Technically, that Cincinnati game will go down as a draw.
The quality of the finishes here, and just the way that guys like Blanco and Valeri and Ebobisse stepped up in those critical moments in those games when they really needed to. Niezgoda also getting on the scoreboard and showing his quality is so clinical there with the finish. And then set piece moments. It just seemed like they were so good in those right moments just to be on the doorstep, just to finish off those chances. And then the PKs as well. They just stepped up in the big-time situations.
Man, looking at like this tournament, looking back on it, there were so many big moments and plays from so many different figures. I mean, Sebastian Blanco is getting a lot of the talk. He will possibly win the player of the tournament. That won't be announced until tomorrow, but he's certainly a front runner for that. Steve Clark saved a penalty. Jeremy Ebobisse with big goals. Jaroslav Niezgoda with big goals. Andy Polo with maybe the goal of the tournament. The center backs tonight getting on the score sheet. And Diego Valeri at 34 years old, still going, still stepping up in those big moments. He did that tonight in the first half, especially with his service on that set piece for Luis Mabiala.
Yeah, he sure did, and you really needed him. And I think there was a lot of questions surrounding, okay, would he be starting in this tournament consistently? You know, would he be coming off the bench? And there's some question marks before the game about whether or not he would start. You have to start Diego Valeri in a game like this. Of course, he's got the experience. He understands what needs to get done. He's got the quality, and he's still a guy, Gio Savaresta says, who's going to be starting games. So certainly you rely on a guy like him. You rely on a guy like Sebastian Blanco, certainly. But then the center backs step up as well, so you have to have some surprises in there as well.
Oh, the maestro, Diego Valeri, after this match, down on the field, spoke with our man in Orlando, Richard Farley.
Diego, it's only been a couple minutes since the final whistle. How does it feel?
It feels great to have another trophy. We fight very hard for it, and this team deserves it.
How does this championship compare to the titles you've won before?
It's just different. It's a different kind of tournament, but as soon as we arrived, we wanted to go back to Portland with the trophy, and we did it.
Congratulations, Diego.
Ever since I've spoken to Diego, which goes back to really the 2015 season, he always mentions trophies and wanting to win trophies for Portland. He's now done that, helped do that twice, and he's done it with Diego Chara by his side, the two 34-year-olds, the Dos Diegos. Look, at this stage in their career, this is the final stage of that era, right? We don't know how many years this final stage is going to go, the Dos Diegos era, but we're in that final stage. And another trophy for those two guys. Their legacy is immense here in Portland.
Yeah, it is. And when you talk about legacy for the Portland Timbers, you're always going to associate that legacy, those trophies, with Dos Diegos. And for a good reason. I mean, those guys have stuck around Portland for so long. They've just been in that starting lineup for so many years. But they've performed every single year for this club. And that makes just a huge difference when you talk about elevating a club like the Portland Timbers, you know, from maybe a club that's not performing and getting trophies to a club that does perform and get trophies. And that's the difference sometimes, is having two players that perform with that kind of quality day in, day out into getting those results.
Let's talk about what this win means on a practical level. The Timbers will have a trophy. They will be the champions. They quite possibly will be forever the reigning and defending champions of the MLS's back tournament if this tournament never happens again, which of course is quite possible, if not likely. They get a CONCACAF Champions League spot next year. They'll be in the tournament, one of the spots for the first time since 2016. That's big. They split $300,000. That was kind of the biggest piece of the prize pool that went to the champion. The CCL spot, Nat, is, I think, the biggest carrot, right? The biggest achievement that they get for winning this. What does it mean to have this club back in the CCL next year?
I think it's hugely important because you talk about the CONCACAF Champions League. You talk about playing against teams from the region, you know, obviously teams from Canada, with Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. But you're talking about teams from down south, Mexico, Liga MX, Costa Rica, Panama. All these teams, they make up this region, and you want to be the best team, the best club in this region, because if you can win that tournament, you actually get to play against the best clubs in the world, from Europe, from South America. So it really is an opportunity to put yourself on the world map, so to speak, and really exercise your dominance, I think, in the region. So it's hugely important for the club in terms of that, and I think hugely important to the players just in terms of being regarded as one of the best clubs in the region.
An MLS club has still never won the CCL in its current form. You guys were close at RSL. Montreal was close. Toronto has been close in a final. That carrot, though, that achievement, still out there. The Portland Timbers now will be able to compete for it next year. Well, one guy who had some major moments for the Timbers to get to this point, didn't have a ton to do tonight, is their goalkeeper, Steve Clark. After the match, he spoke with Richard Farley in Orlando.
First question has to be, how's it feel?
Man, we're having so much fun. What a tournament. Glad to win. I can't wait to go home.
41 days when you get on the plane tomorrow. Does that make it sweeter?
Man, it's a nice Lenten period away from home, so yeah, we're happy. But it's so fun to win. I feel good.
Congratulations, Steve.
Look, this has got to be big for Steve Clark. This is his first final since the 2015 MLS Cup. You could see on his face, I think, the joy, what it meant to him at the final whistle to win this. He had that mistake, of course, in the Cincinnati game. He made up for that, saving the penalty. And otherwise, man, he was really good this tournament. And you got to feel happy, really happy for a guy. And you can see it on his face there in those moments after the final whistle, what it means to him. Yeah,
you absolutely do. For a guy like Steve Clark, who's made his mistake, in 2015, obviously against the Portland Timbers, then for him to come up big time, in a final, he didn't have a whole lot to do in this final, but he was a big part of the reason why the Timbers are in this final. He makes a mistake, of course, against Cincinnati, but he makes up for it in his reaction in the PK saves. And so I think that for Steve Clark, he's a fantastic goalkeeper. He's a tried and true #1. It's a fantastic night for him.
This win in general, what does it mean? Like, I think going into this tournament, we didn't know what this tournament would look like. We didn't know maybe how to process it from a historical perspective, even from a present perspective. Now that we've seen the tournament, what do you think it means?
It's unique, certainly, and we talk about, it gives me goosebumps to think about us never having another one of these MLS's back tournament, because if we never have another one, then the Timbers will always be the team that won this tournament. You go back to the history books, you always have that answer. The Portland Timbers were the team that won this tournament, and I think it replaces the U.S. Open Cup because we have no U.S. Open Cup this year. We don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the season with MLS. They could be the only champions this year, so I think it is huge for this club, I think, on so many levels, and huge for the city of Portland because it gave all of us soccer fans something to cheer about for this past month.
And a big boost for them as they head into a restarted regular season. We'll talk about that later on in the show. August 23rd, the Timbers will be back playing a regular season games, actually right here at Providence Park. But now let's go back down to Orlando, the man who scored the opening goal in this match, Luis Mabiala, at the podium in the post-game press conference.
Yeah, Dario is a very good player, and he melted very well in the collective that we have, and we speak the same football. I mean, he played in Italy, so he's very on point tactically. He understood right away what Gio was asking to us and to the rest of the team as well. So it's been easy for him to fit in the team, and it's been easy for me as well to have him alongside me because, as I said, he's a very good player, and he brings a lot to this defensive backline. So yeah, they tested us very hard, but the fact that we've been through these two oppositions showed that we have a lot of personality and character. This in the quarantine time, we've been talking a lot about what we wanted to accomplish and how we wanted to play. Obviously, we wanted to play maybe better today, but at the end of the day, you don't play finals, you just win it. And we will just remember the winner of this MLS's back tournament, and this Portland.
Interesting from Luis Mabiala there, and yeah, looking at the stats, Orlando had the ball basically 2/3 of the game. Shots were pretty even. Shots on goal were pretty even. As we said, Steve Clark didn't have much to do. You wouldn't say that this was the Timbers' best performance of this tournament, But like Larice said, it doesn't matter. It's a final. They won the game, and that's what matters.
That's exactly what matters. You look back at the history books, you see your name in the history books, you say, hey, it doesn't matter how we won that game, but we got it done. This is a team of warriors, Jake. This is a team that knew what they wanted to get done. They knew how to get it done, and they went out and they executed Giovanni Savarese's plan. And you see that reflected in the final score. You see that reflected in the fact that they're hoisting a trophy right now.
There's always, like, you hear about finals, right? Like, finals are never particularly pretty games. And I think tonight played out in that way. What is it about final matches, you've been in many in your career, that kind of play out like we saw tonight?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is emotion. You know, you think about what leads you to this point in time to get to a final. There's a lot that leads up to it, and so many games, so much blood spilt, and obviously, you know, you're away from your friends and your family for an extended period of time. So you want to get something, you know, out of this, and so there's a lot of emotions in it. It makes it a little bit tighter because there's more energy. Every single play seems to matter a little bit more, and the game really never opened up for either team. It didn't seem like throughout the course of it because it was so tightly contested, and that's why it's such a close scoreline in 2-1.
I mentioned this earlier, and let's break it down a little bit. Sebastian Blanco's play at this tournament didn't get on the score sheet today. Wasn't maybe as influential as we've seen him in other games, but 3 goals, 5 assists. It was kind of billed going into the final. The player of the tournament race was Blanco versus Nani, and whoever would win tonight was going to win that award. What's your case for it being Sebastian Blanco?
Well, I think you look at the stats, of course, that they speak for themselves in terms of the number of goals that Sebastian Blanco not only has scored or assisted on, but has been a part of. But I think even more than that, Sebastian Blanco is kind of the emotional leader of this team. Whenever there's the game is on an edge, you have him, you know, showing up and putting a tackle. And you saw the tackle in the first 5 minutes he put on against the Orlando City player. That's ferocious. That is your quote unquote, you know, your winger, your attacking player putting in a huge tackle for your team, you know, inside your own defensive third. You know, so it's those moments, those kinds of plays that really can shift momentums in games, and that's why you have a guy like Sebastian Blanco on your team.
Yeah, he's never afraid to put in a tackle, and to kind of look at his case for player of the tournament. Our Ross Smith took just one game, the New York City game, and looked at all the different ways that Sebastian Blanco made an impact to show why, at least in Ross's eyes, he deserves to be named the player of the tournament.
Sebastian Blanco's name needs to be top of the list when it comes to MVPs of the tournament. He's been there for the big moments, but the little ones along the way as well. If we go back to the New York City FC match, Blanco put on display all the attributes to his game. The Timbers knew going in that they would have to be good on the ball, and Blanco shows early on his ability to pick the right pass. This combination play between Blanco, Char, and Abobasi is so good, and it eventually leads to Abobasi getting a chance on goal near the start of the match. So Blanco's ability to pick a pass. Blanco, as well, what stands out to you, he's always available for his teammates. He's not afraid to go into situations that are tricky to play out of. He can take on the task of playing out of difficult scenarios and be able to look after the ball. He's two-footed. So whether the ball comes to his right side, his left side, he's confident. He's confident to play both sides of his body. Not many players can say that in this league. He's got confidence. And not many players are willing to try a trick in their own defensive third. And here we see a nice little nutmeg on defensive midfielder Alexander Ring. But most importantly, Blanco, after that trick, he can pick out the right pass. And it's Laria coming down the left side. And Blanco's gone from relieving the Timbers of pressure to putting New York under pressure. His ability to find space. He always seems to know where to pop up on the pitch. And not only that, how he maneuvers when he gets there. This, as the ball comes across, his first touch is actually a pass going forward. So he's found the space, he's turned his body well, and he's played a nice positive pass. If we get to the biggest moment of all, Blanco's goal right before halftime. I think you'd be surprised to see that it starts actually in Steve Clark's hand. And as Steve Clark rolls the ball out, I'm just going to count in the bottom left-hand corner the number of passes involved in this sequence. What you'll notice as well is that the Timbers have time and space on the ball. New York City FC have realized that the Timbers can play through them, that they've been playing well out of pressure, so they do have to sit off now and again. On the 11th pass, I'll just highlight Blanco, who's showing up barely inside the attacking half on the right-hand side. And now as Blanco is starting to get more involved in this sequence, he drifts centrally, and he's constantly looking to see where the gaps are, where the holes are that he can get himself into. When he does pop up again on the left-hand side and combines with a good overlapping run from Villafania, Blanco just heads directly towards the goal. And when the ball does drop to him, he kills the first touch nicely, and the second touch just caresses it beautifully into the side corner. Nice little bit of class. So great overall first half from Blanco, and he continued that into the second half. When we see him popping up on the left-hand side and a great ball from Diego Chara, I just get the sense that Jimmy Chara, as he gets to know his teammates more, he would turn this into a great opportunity. Blanco, his ability in transition to pick out a pass, he sets on Jimmy Chara what I think is pinpoint or near enough that if Jimmy Chara just gambles at the back stick, this could have been a big moment. But let's talk about the big moments that were obvious for us. Valeri's goal and his combination play with Nice-Goda, but this doesn't happen without the entry pass from Sebastian Blanco. The way his first touch, he settles the ball and he picks up his head, he sees the run from Valeri, and it's pinpoint the way he loops this ball over the defender's head right onto the foot of Valeri. Still requires a little bit of magic, but Valeri and Nice-Goda, they provide that, and they provide the Timbers with the second goal. And then finally, maybe the biggest moment of the match, Andy Polo's goal. Maybe one of the bigger moments of the tournament. But where it starts, Blanco getting on the ball and his calm as he settles the ball and he's waiting for runners to come off him. He clips this ball nicely into Andy Polo's path, and Polo does the rest the way he takes it on. It's a spectacular moment. But there were so many moments, big and small, that if you look back, Sebastian Blanco was involved in all of them.
Man, what a tournament from Sebastian Blanco. Tonight, maybe, as we kind of said, not as involved, but he was electric. And you mentioned the tackle. He brings, I think, a feistiness, kind of a grit to the club that at times it seems like they need it, and when they need it, he's the one to bring it. He's such an important player, and now I think the whole league is seeing maybe what people in Portland have seen the past couple of years up close. Yeah,
I would hope so, and I think that we get to see it, week in, week out from Sebastian Blanco. And again, I think just important for the team to have somebody like that. I love how he gets into these scrappy moments with the referee or somebody on the sideline or another player, and it just seems to elevate his game. He gets a yellow card, and all of a sudden you just see the best of Sebastian Blanco. He just plays on this knife's edge, and this team really rallies around a guy like that, and I think we'll be seeing the best of Sebastian Blanco. We'll see even more of it in years to come. Well, Timbers head coach Giovanni Savarese coaching in his 6th final as a manager, 4 with the New York Cosmos, now 2 with the Portland Timbers, and he wins a trophy, wins a final as Timbers head coach for the first time tonight. He was at the podium afterwards. Here's Giovanni Savarese's postgame press conference presented by Alaska Airlines.
Thank you very much. There's a great feeling to achieve this in this tournament, a historical moment for our club, and credit to the players because they came here with a purpose. From the moment that we came here from Portland, the mind was to make sure that we win one game at a time, and everybody demonstrated game by game that the unity that we had, the maturity that they show, the way they went into every single game, achieving this has been a huge accomplishment, especially in a final that was very complicated against a very good team, Orlando, well coached, and not easy, but the guys were able to make sure that we execute the plan. We were able to get a great victory, and now we're able to lift the trophy, and the most important part, being able to qualify to the CONCACAF champion. It was exactly as we expected. We knew that they're a very good team. They do plan games in a very good way. They have their principles, but in their principles they also tweak a couple of things depending whoever they play. And as I said before, Oscar is a very good coach. So we expected the game to be very difficult. I thought that our game plan was executed well. We closed the spaces through the middle. We didn't allow them to be able to penetrate too many times. We knew the combinations on top of the box. We knew that they're dangerous with the wide players, with their fullback, Ruan on the right side, on the left side with Nani. And I thought that the guys did a great job to make sure that we didn't allow them to be able to get in those spaces that they can hurt us. I think the first probably 20 minutes were the most difficult, and then little by little we start getting the ball a little bit more, moving it around, getting a little bit more possession, attacking spaces in behind, being more dangerous, and scoring the first goal was a very important sign for us to feel that we were following the right path to be able to get in the right side of the game. Second half, I thought that we did even better, and we created chances. So I thought that the performance of the players, the way they executed the plan was very well done, and we play, as I said, against a very good team that we knew was going to propose a very difficult challenge.
So Gio helps the Timbers, manages the Timbers to bring a trophy back to Portland. From a manager's perspective, Nat, I mean, this was challenging, right? It's been a challenging 4 or 5 months for everybody in the world. And specifically for the job that Gio has had to do over the past 4 or 5 months, and then had to do in the bubble in Orlando, something nobody else has ever had to do. It's a new experience. And he got it right the whole way and got his team to bring a trophy home.
Yeah, you'd say one of the most difficult tournaments to manage for a coach, and Giovanni Savarese did it with aplomb. And I think it started with the way he managed his team, making sure that they stayed on Portland, West Coast time while they were on the East Coast. I think that gave them kind of a rhythm and an ability to continue to talk to their family and friends, after training, and they weren't, on that East Coast time and kind of shut off from the rest of their friends and family. And then I think also, with the way he manages his team, throughout the early rounds, resting, Laris Mabiala and Diego Valeri, in key moments, Jorge Villafana as well. Diego Chara, of course, plays 90 minutes every single game. And, the substitutions he gets right as well. But I think overall, Jake, the thing I'm most impressed with was the game plan. It seemed like they really settled into a game plan against FC Cincinnati, where they were, sitting back, they were comfortable just absorbing pressure and then growing into the game. And you saw that against NYCFC, Philadelphia, and then finally against Orlando City for the win. So I think that they did such a good job executing that game plan, and I think that's something we'll see from Gio, in coming games.
One thing that Gio did use throughout this tournament was the team's depth, and we're going to look at a couple kind of big picture takeaways, Nat, that you had from this tournament as a whole. We'll start with the depth of the squad, which was impressive and which certainly helped them along the way to win.
Yeah, you have to have depth in this tournament. We always compare the depth of the Portland Timbers to the depth of the teams they play against. You compare them to, for example, Orlando City. They don't have the same kind of depth. And against LA Galaxy, you talk about Marvin Loria. He stepped up big-time moments. He was able to open the attack up for the Portland Timbers. He's a big depth piece for the Portland Timbers. I thought Pablo Bonilla had a decent tournament. He came off and was able to put in some good tackles and some good defensive performances, instead of Duval being in there. Niezgoda, of course, coming off the bench, being clinical when he needed to be clinical, finishing the chances that he got was really important. And of course, Andy Polo's bombasso of a goal against NYCFC to wrap things up. You need to rely on guys like that, these kind of depth pieces, in order to get things done.
Goal of the tournament is an award. That'll be given out over the next couple of days. Celebration of the tournament, not an official award, but I think Andy Polo should have it. We talk about depth. How about the big names, the spine of this team, maybe as good as any in the league?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look from the back. So you start with the back of the team. You talk about Steve Clark. His willingness just to get stuck in, to make the big saves, make the big plays. That's his patented save right there. And what a fantastic second save right there, just to keep the Timbers in that game early on. Laris Mabiala, with the way he was breaking lines with some of his passing, obviously cutting things out in that back line. Obviously, Diego Chara doing Diego Chara things, just making interceptions and then springing the counterattack. He's just so good at doing those types of things. That's why he's always in the starting lineup for the Portland Timbers. And of course, you have Niezgoda and Valeri making things happen there. But Valeri obviously had a great tournament, and so did Jeremy Abobasi. I mean, what a great goal this was from him. I thought he really came on in terms of his finishing in this tournament. I think we're still going to see the best of him in years to come.
So the Timbers MLS is back champs in 2020. We're going to use them lifting a trophy tonight as an excuse to throw it back about 4.5 years, not quite 4.5 years, to December of 2015, the last time the Timbers won a cup final. It was, of course, MLS Cup in Columbus, Ohio. As we flash it back, the Portland Timbers hoisting a trophy for the second time in their MLS era tonight. Second time that they've won a final of any kind in all eras. They've done it tonight. The MLS is back tournament. And again, Nat, you won the final, right, in 2015. You were on the field in Columbus. What did that mean? Like, put me in the shoes of the guys who were lifting that trophy tonight and celebrating on the field in Orlando.
Well, there's a certain euphoria to it. You go into that game, you don't know what's going to happen, but you put the work in, you execute the game plan from the coach, and when you come out champions at the end of it, it's just this massive relief, this euphoria. You get to celebrate with the fans. It was Portland's, first MLS Cup first championship. And so that feeling was just so special, so important. In fact, I remember Jake being interviewed by you on the field after the game. Never knew I would end up in broadcasting, but here we are. But for the Portland Timbers, man, such a great feeling and so good for the club as well, just to elevate the status of this club. And I think really continue to have the Portland Timbers be in the discussion for some of the top teams in this league.
When we did that interview on the field after that game, you still had a full beard, which wouldn't have been the case 30 minutes later. You've grown it back now in the 4.5 years, but a little bit cut off.
No, nobody's cutting his beard off for this one. No, I wasn't a part of this one.
That's fair. Very fair. As we kind of wrap up our look at this tournament and begin to look ahead to the regular season, big picture, what is your #1 takeaway from the Portland Timbers winning the MLS's back tournament, maybe just in general from this tournament as a whole?
I think overall it's experience. You just relied on those experienced players for this tournament, and it really just kind of came together around those players. And I think that's what Gio built his game plan off of, his formation, the way he wanted his game plan to be. And those players performed. I mean, let's be honest here. Sebastian Blanco had an amazing tournament. Mabiala, Chara, Valeri, all those guys stepped up. Steve Clark, Jorge Villafana. These are guys that you rely on, and it's that experience that really brings you through the tough times. And I think that's been the overarching theme for me in watching this team play and having this thing, come together. And I'm not surprised by the results because they've got so much quality and so much experience.
The Timbers will return to Portland tomorrow. They'll take some time off. They haven't had a lot of time off in the past 41 days it will be in the bubble. And then they'll get ready to play the Seattle Sounders. MLS announced Phase 1 of the return to the regular season. They announced 6 games for all of the teams based in the United States. Still up in the air what's going to happen with the Canadian teams. And this is the upcoming schedule for the Portland Timbers. These are regular season matches. It's going to be highly regionalized. There aren't going to be fans for any of these games on the Timber schedule. No fans in the stadium here in Portland. But they have something to look forward to now as they come back, Nat, and against a lot of teams they're very familiar with.
Yeah, I think we all have something to look forward to, which is fantastic. I think that it's a great setup doing a regionalized type of matchup where you're playing against teams who are a little bit closer. You can kind of go fly in, fly out the same day and kind of avoid those bubble issues you might have had previously. And I think it sets up some great matchups. Seattle, San Jose, Salt Lake, Galaxy, LAFC, those are all teams that the Timbers want to play against, and they're teams that are very difficult to play against. So I think they're going to create some great games.
August 23rd, right here. The stadium will be just as empty as it is now. However, there will be a match at Providence Park. Our Carl's Jr. look ahead. They'll play the Seattle Sounders. Let's just throw right back into it, right? Timbers Sounders, 7 p.m. on FS1. Also in 7:50, the game on the radio here at Providence Park. And at Carl's Jr. look ahead, Nat, like playing Seattle right away. You're getting right back into it, right? What are you going to look forward to in this match?
Well, you certainly have to say, if you're the Portland Timbers, hey, we got this one first. We got that tournament, right? Seattle, they bowed out in the early rounds. They didn't even make it to the knockout round. So certainly Portland has that on Seattle Sounders. However, I think that's going to create a little bit of an edge for Seattle. I think they're going to be upset by the performance in this tournament. I think they're certainly going to want to make amends. And I think you make amends by having better performances and making it to MLS Cup at the end of the season. So it's not going to be an easy matchup, certainly, but it's going to be a fun one for us to watch.
Well, a trophy is coming back to Portland. I don't know if there'll be a banner, a plaque that'll go up behind us. There will be another trophy, though, in the trophy case here at Providence Park when the Portland Timbers return to Oregon tomorrow from Florida. After 7 games for the Timbers, 7 games for us, this is it for our coverage of the MLS's back tournament. It's been great to be back talking about soccer, analyzing soccer, and to be able to cover a championship-winning team. The Portland Timbers, 2-1 winners over Orlando City tonight. They are the champions of the MLS is Back tournament. For Nat Borchers, for our entire crew that has worked so hard during this pandemic here at Providence Park to give you coverage of this tournament, my name is Jake Zivin saying good night from Providence Park. Timbers bringing a trophy back to Portland after a 2-1 win in the final over Orlando City.